You can just say Dusty. That's fine too.
Dusty and Jenny, is that okay? You guys?
Yeah, great.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the special education track here for the Kentucky Go Digital virtual event. I am Elaine Abanatha, and I have Dusty and Jenny with me, and I'll let them introduce themselves during their presentations. But we are all associated with special education and somehow in some way, and we are super excited and thankful for you special education teachers out there. And if you're not a special education teacher, you are more than welcome to. You're going to learn something as well. So without further ado, I'm going to let Dusty go ahead and start off.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Good morning. And I'm so pleased that you all are here joining this session. So I'm Dusty Columbia Embry, and just a brief little introduction. I am a former classroom special education teacher, and now I teach at the university level doing teacher preparation for special education. I'm a mom of two, both of whom have received special education services at some time in their lives. I've got one who's 15 and going into her 10th grade year, and my oldest is 17 and is actually just starting at college this year. So all the exciting stuff. And so just a little bit about that. But I did want to talk to you today about using the power of HyperDocs, and with using HyperDocs, recognizing that this is really, it's one of the ways that we can build in supports like scaffolding, accommodations, and modifications for our students with disabilities. So just a brief little information, if you're not familiar with HyperDocs, some teachers, Lisa Highfill, Kelly Hilton, and Sarah Landis, are classroom teachers who were doing some work that they found when they talked was similar, and they're the ones who coined this phrase HyperDoc. And then in 2016, they published this book, the HyperDoc Handbook. And if you click on I know some of you are in the presentation now, so if you click on the image, it will take you to the Amazon store where you can buy, it's like $10 on Kindle and a little bit more on paper. But I'm going to show you just a quick video. This is just a real quick introduction. And someone let me know if you're not hearing the sound.
Created using Powtoon.
All right, great. So hopefully everybody was able to hear and to see that. It was just music. You were just able to read it. So that's, oh, one more time. There we go. All right. So hopefully we're able to see the video. And actually, and just as we're getting started, I'm going to set a timer down here for us, and you should be able to link the slide if you from the agenda. And what I would love for you all to do is take just about 4 or 5 minutes. I'm going to set the timer for 5. You should hear the timer go off when it's ready. To when you click on these slides, if you're in it, you can either read or watch. You've got a column here on read. This is information that you can read about the HyperDocs, or watch. All of these videos are much longer than 5 minutes, so you can kind of skip around. But I'm just going to give you about 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll come back together, okay? I'm going to set the timer here. And hopefully you guys are all on the presentation on this slide where you can click.
And we're right at about 1.5 minutes. So we'll come back together in just a minute. All right, let's go ahead and come back together. And so if you're not familiar with HyperDocs, what I've got for you here are the 7 magic steps of the HyperDoc. And this is a template that you can use with any lesson that you're working with. But we always start with that engage and explore. And so with engage, this is our hook that we always use in our teaching, where we give students some information that might interest them. For us, we started with a quick video to give us a chance to be engaged. And then we always give students an opportunity to explore the content on their own, where at that point, we're not telling them what it is that we want them to know. And so that's where we were just now. We did the engage with the video. We did some exploring. We just took a couple of minutes to click on some different videos and some pages that we could read about it. And then we get to the part where we explain. So we're going to go through these other steps as we continue through. Now I'm gonna, because I always plan more information than I need, I'm gonna skip over this slide, but when you come back to it later, we've got information where you can explore even more about using our blended learning, and that's where we are combining our traditional classroom instruction with what we're doing with HyperDocs. And so all of these hyperlinks are there for you, but you guys can come back to that later as you go, or as you're looking at it at another time. So in terms of the explain, this is the section,
This is the section of the HyperDoc or the info, the content where what we're doing is giving the explanation of the content that we're using. So here I'm going to tell you that the HyperDoc is a digital lesson plan, and one of the key factors is that it incorporates student choice. And we know how important that is for all students, but particularly our students with disabilities. And we understand that student choice is a key part of our universal design for learning framework. So this is this digital document. We typically use a Google Doc or Google Slides, but all of the components of the learning cycle, we pull it together into one central hub, and then we use hyperlinks to all the resources that students are going to need to complete that learning cycle. So let's just look at a little bit more. The key components, we're going to look at some student choice. We're going to have a variety of tasks and resources. So with our students who need additional support, whether they're students with disabilities or learning an English as a second language, we can incorporate videos, we can have cheat sheets, vocabulary information, examples, and models. It's self-paced. And the key for our students with disabilities is that they can repeat the information as needed. If we give an instructional video, or if we link it to a video that goes over vocabulary, or if we just give the instructions on these are steps 1, 2, and 3, those students can go back and replay that information as many times as they need. So that opportunity for remediation is built into the idea of using the HyperDoc. When we use that individual pacing, we know that helps increase student ownership and accountability for their learning. And these are traits that all students need, but especially our students with disabilities. So we're still in the explain mode, and I'm actually going to leave this one for you to do later. But this is just a quick quotation from Catherine Neves, who is a special education teacher who uses HyperDocs in her resource classroom. And just what I've done here is I've created just a Voki, and I've inserted her text, and the Boston Terrier speaks it. But you guys can click on that a little bit later. But what she's doing is explaining how she uses the multimedia aspects of the HyperDoc to increase student interest and give them choices in how they learn the information, and also how they produce their knowledge. So, and when we think about the benefits of our HyperDocs, we want to step away as teachers. We want to step away from being that sage on the stage, and we are increasingly seeing the effectiveness of being the guide on the side. But the HyperDocs allow us to have fewer lectures, because the HyperDoc provides that direct instruction part of the lesson, and then also additional resources as well. When we're not responsible for lecturing to students, but they're getting that information through their HyperDoc, that increases our ability to provide intensity in our instruction for those students who need more intensive intervention and instruction in the classroom. It allows us that face-to-face interaction. When we develop a really good HyperDoc, it will run itself because the students are working through it independently. And because it's individualized, or we can put in those extra resource components, we can put in picture schedules, we can put in checklists, we can provide the supports that students need when we say, well, I have this class, but I've got 4 students who can't work independently, or who aren't going to be able to work independently. We can build that into it. We can build in the steps on how to work independently, what you do first, and then next. But this frees up our teachers to move around the classroom and increase our one-on-one time with students. The other thing that I love about it is that we can go a little bit paperless, but it increases our flexibility. If one part of my lesson isn't working, I can change it in my master HyperDoc, and that change will take effect immediately across all of the students' HyperDocs. I don't have to recopy all my materials. I can also individualize my students' HyperDocs, because those of us who are using Google Classroom, we can set it up so that the students have to create their own copies, or I can make the original HyperDoc and copy it for my students. And then I can individualize certain students' HyperDocs with more supports, so that I can do some remediation, or even some extension or enrichment if that's my goal for that student. We get multimodal opportunities. So we can include all kinds of multimedia. We can do images. We've got videos for students who have little or no background knowledge, so we can access their prior knowledge. We can create prior knowledge if we need to. We can embed different types of apps based on the content or the context or the need of the individual student. And because we're really dealing with the power of everything on the internet, students can produce products in nearly unlimited ways. And this is, again, a key component of our UDL. So they're making videos, they're taking pictures, they're doing Padlets, they're creating educreations. We're doing that. They're making blogs. Really, anything that is possible, we can create it, and then they can create it too. We can increase their engagement as well. Um, it offers an amount of privacy for students so that when we are individualizing their work or their instruction, or we're providing additional resources, it's confidential. They're customized, or we can customize them, and no one else has to know because they're all doing their work independently. So if I've got a student who needs a text at a lower reading level, then I can adjust that reading level and no one else can see that or know that that's happened. If I've got students who need to use read and write for Google because they're having the text read aloud to them, they just put in their headphones and they can listen, and no one else is paying attention to that. Or I can create those instructional videos using educreations or just YouTube, just really anything I want to, and I can incorporate those into the HyperDoc for those individual students who need that, and only me and the student know that. So let's take a look. We've got this is a sample HyperDoc that I actually just pulled off the hyperdoc.co website. And so I'm going to click onto it, but all of the bolded words that you're going to see are linked to outside resources. And in the right-hand column, that's set aside for students to take notes. So I'm going to click on that. Hopefully you guys will be able to follow along. Perfect, it's going in. So there's a huge, huge database of all of these HyperDocs. Teachers share them freely and regularly, and so that's been pulled off of this, and I'll link to that later in the slides for you. But we've got the instructions per file, and then make a copy of this document. And now this is in your own Google Drive. These are for students who are doing this, and then they can, each one of these hyperlinks is linked to a video, or the bolded. So here's a video from the Travel Channel. We've got a photo essay from CNN. There's a slideshow from Pop Sugar. So all of this, they're working through, and then the teacher's saying, you should jot these notes below. What are the places that you find interesting or that you want to learn more about? Why would you want to go there? So this is in that explore stage. The teacher's not telling the students what they're supposed to learn. It's the teacher's just letting the students engage. Music and lyrics. We've got links to YouTube songs for them, an article on national parks. So all kinds of stuff. And then continued prompts. What are they going to do? They're going to watch the video. They're going to explore the text. And any place in here, we could start adding the resources that we need for students. I'm going to click back over here for us. And that lets us plan. And so on this slide, I've just kind of what I might do for a student with disabilities in the classroom. I might add links for vocabulary. I can use read and write. We've got the article. I can create a checklist with step-by-step instructions. I can individualize the HyperDoc if I've got students who are on a modified curriculum. I can modify it. No one else knows that. They're all working on the content that we are doing together as a class. And actually, we can try this. So if you're in the document itself, you can click on this as well from the slides. But I'll show you here. So here's what this is a Greek mythology HyperDoc that I have pulled from the web and have modified it. So this is one that a teacher designed. What is Greek mythology? Who are some of the gods and goddesses, and what do myths explain? So the teacher had said, here's this engage, and she gave a video, and then she gave the students their task, jot down your information, and who is this? And then the column that I added, or thinking about supports that we could add. So we could add a video timer here, like we had in that earlier slide, to help students practice their pacing. That's one of the concerns that we know happens frequently with our students with disabilities in the classroom, is that they don't know how to pace, or they're not yet really good at pacing. So we can actually put a timer and build that in with instructions. Click the timer, and when it goes off, you need to move to task 2, because we know that it's a 10-minute activity. We can also use the comments feature. So I've got here where I've added a comment, add a checklist or a picture schedule for students who need more. So you should feel free, if you're clicked in on this now, from your Google Drive, then feel free to add a comment and check through. But the idea is that we can just go through, and I just wanted to have you see another example where we can embed supports right into the Google Doc that no one else necessarily sees or has to know about. All right. There are a lot of different templates or formats, and these are the four most common models for building our HyperDoc. And it's not that one is better than the other, they're all different. But when we're thinking about how do we design our HyperDoc, the questions that we have to ask are, what do I want my students to explore and know? What do I want my students to do and produce? And what can be assessed for understanding? And we always start, no matter which one, we're always starting with that engage and explore. So we've got here, let's explore, let's engage and explore. The connection is still that engagement task and still engagement. But when the students are in that engage and explore stage, this is the time that as a teacher, I can go around the room, I'm gathering information, I'm watching where students are really engaged, where they're struggling, where I need to build in more supports. I can pull a small group at that time. I can do some remediation or some language support during that explore time. This is the time that as a teacher, I can do some formative assessment and then base my instruction on that later. So we've got these four models. The basic one, this is our basic model that the HyperDoc folks recommend. This is our explore, explain, apply, which is really the two examples that I showed you with the U.S. history and the Greek mythology that they used with that. Then we've got the 5 E's. Engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. And then this middle one is our workshop model. So once you're in the presentation, you can click on each of the images and the image will take you to that particular template so that you can look at it a little bit more in depth. So just some keys, as I'll try and wrap up here real quickly. Just some keys for you is always start with a template. Rather than build your first HyperDoc from scratch, unless you're just really itching to do that, it's easier to start with a pre-made template, and you can find tons of them for free on hyperdocs.co, and that's linked for you here. You can also start with a completely finished HyperDoc that someone else created, which is what I usually do for their classroom, and then modify it based on your own use. And pretty much any content area topic is available. And you can modify it for whatever grade level that you're working in. The key for us here, though, is that we want to build in participation, collaboration, and multimedia. It's really easy to let this just become an online worksheet. So we want to make sure that we're using video, interactive posters like thing links, podcasts, online flashcards, etc., so that we can build in participation, collaboration, and then multimedia experiences. One key is that we offer choice because HyperDocs allow students to work at different speeds, and then they can navigate learning in a way that interests them. So we want to give them options for the kind and the quantity of materials that they need to learn and how they're going to practice and apply it and demonstrate their learning. So we want to give them a lot of choices, but don't throw everything but the kitchen sink. So we want to choose those resources carefully. If we've got those students who tend to get overwhelmed with too many choices, then we can definitely reduce the number of choices for those students and say you can choose from these 2 things because you know your students. It's important to teach students how to use the HyperDocs. Just like we teach all of our procedures in the classroom, usually a whole lot in the beginning and then we refresh throughout the year. We'll need to do that over and over again with HyperDocs, reminding them how to do that, having clear expectations and models, and build in opportunities to repeat the instructions digitally. So you can have a standardized, this is how we do it video that you link to every single HyperDoc if you need to. And where possible, collaborate with other teachers. There are really thousands of teachers are doing this. HyperDocs.co is a great site. The FTCSC is a fantastic website with lots and lots of templates. And then on Twitter, the hashtag HyperDocs it will link you to all kinds of stuff. But when you do that, just be sure to give credit to whoever created the original. You just stick it in the header or the footer. And part of that is just us demonstrating how to not plagiarize, and because we want an inclusive sharing community when we're doing that. Don't create a HyperDoc for every lesson, just like project-based learning or any other thing that method of instruction that students really enjoy. We don't do it for every single lesson. So we want to keep it fresh and we want to use it when it fits. If you click on this digital tools, you'll get to this. I love this EdTech tools for HyperDocs. So it takes that basic format, the 7-step format, and then all of these are hyperlinks for ways to do this. So if you're new to HyperDocs and I say things like you have the whole internet at your fingertips, but that's overwhelming for you, and it can be overwhelming for lots of us. Here are all kinds of links to ways to do that. So if we were doing our engage, all of these different ideas. If we're doing our explore, all of these different ideas. But if you click on that, it'll take you there and you will be able to see that in depth. I'm being cognizant of time and I'm going to skip this. This takes you to a link of 8 essential Google Drive elements. So if you're already using Google Classroom, if you're already using Google Drive, it's probably just a refresher for you. If you're new to Google Classroom or you're new to Google Drive, definitely click on this link. It's just a quick little article on what we're doing and the eight ways to do it with our HyperDocs. And then we always want to give students that opportunity to reflect. So I definitely want to give you the opportunity to reflect while still being cognizant of time. It would be great if later you could click on the link to this Google Doc and find the table and add your thoughts. Questions like, how does blended learning benefit our students, or what supports for students with disabilities can we build in? And then what you see as the challenges. So if you list a challenge, then I would love for any of us to be able to go back in and offer a suggestion or an example of how we have addressed that. So this link is live and you can click on that and do that at any point that you'd like. These are some links for you. The HyperDoc official website on Pinterest, Middle School Minds, Twitter. There's a HyperDoc group on Facebook. And I love the Facebook group because people will frequently say, here's what I'm looking for. And then teachers who've already done that, they will link it and say, oh, you can use mine, or oh, here's this one. And then this is a link to any of the takeaways that you might have from visiting those. So I want to thank you for your time and taking some time to learn about how we can support our students who have some extra needs in our classrooms using HyperDocs. If you need to connect with me, this is my email address. This is @expert_co-teacher is me at Twitter. Just a reminder, there's a link for the share that you can fill out for your PD credit. It's going to be shared with you at the conclusion of today's event. And if you click on this handout link at the very bottom, I've got a quick handout for you that just has some links to some other documents for you, that has a link to all of the connections and hopefully anything that you might want to do. So thank you so much for taking time with me and letting me talk about something.
Thank you. Dr. Columbia Embry, we just had the chat was going on fire. If you will, just click that share button and make it where everyone with the link can view a couple. Some of us weren't able to see it. So they will all jump into your presentation and utilize all those goodies that you have given them. I'm going to give a couple shout outs to some of the people on the chat. We have Jenny Miller-Horn, Jessica Hoffman, we have Mary Todd and Patty Lynn. We also have Vanessa Mormon. Thank you guys for watching. I know I've got tons of other people I probably haven't even said anything to, but Dr. Columbia Embry, I appreciate what you've shared, because I personally even put on the chat that if I had this when I was in the classroom, it would have taken my differentiation to a whole nother level. And that's where it really hit home, was how do I juggle all these plates? How do I do all this? And that is really, and that's one thing that Kentucky Go Digital is all about, is that us sharing makes us all smarter, and we're working not harder. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yes, work smarter, not harder. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and talk about something that I'm very passionate about, and that is Clipboard behavior plans. So, here's our agenda. So we got that. Let me make sure I go to the right one. Here it is. It's always funny to try to pull up your your presentation and then you can't find it. So if you are on this, you can find mine right here beside my name, and it is for special ed paperwork, and mainly I'm going to talk about behavior plans and throw in some things as well for IEPs at a glance, and timeline. So let's go ahead and talk about timelines, because this is also near and dear to my heart, because I felt almost like everyone was asking me, are you on your, how's the annual review doing? How is this, how's the reeval? Have you started that? And I got especially the first couple of years as a special ed teacher, I got very overwhelmed and thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to forget, and just that anxiety. But I created this, and there is a copy, a link somewhere, and if not, I will make sure that it's on there. But there's a template for you. And what I really did was I just made formulas within a Google Sheet, and to calculate those dates that I needed. So it was for the annual review, I knew that I needed 364 days after that. So then it calculated that due date. And so this really kept me organized, and I wanted to make sure that I shared that as well with others. Not to mention all of the accommodations that my students got. I kept track with this because I felt as if when time came up for testing, ACT testing, or K-Prep, I was asked these by whoever was like the DAC who needed that information. And I had this readily handy and was able to also make sure that they were shared with that. So this was a huge benefit for me, and I hope others find some worth in this as well. So, oh, there it is. Auto think caseload timeline. So there is your link right there. So, all right. So another thing that, as I said earlier, that's near and dear to my heart were the behavior charts. And I felt when I first started in elementary school, and I got to work as a collaboration teacher with the elementary school for 6 years. And it really broke my heart that my kids were carrying around these clipboards and not just being identified as having a behavior plan, but then I noticed that other kids were also having to, oh, here's your clipboard, don't forget your clipboard. And then that information as far as their behavior was public knowledge. And that killed my soul. So I decided to make it digital, and I hope a lot of people have done this. And if not, this is a very simple way to do it. You create a Google form. And to create a Google form, if you've not done that, you're going to go to your Drive. And I'll just go ahead and do that while we're here. So you just go to your Drive, and you're going to go to your New button in the top left corner. And you're going to go down to More, and then a Google form. And so I really just took the IEP. Let's go back to that. And I had it right beside me. And then I made sure that those behavior goals were written in layman terms. So I would write, so let's say, well, here's a will not hit, or did the student lay their hands on another student or someone? And then in the description of that question, I would actually put down what that IEP goal was, because I'm going to share this form with general ed teachers, and I didn't want them to read that IEP goal and then have to think, oh, well, I'm not really sure what this is. So I wanted to make sure layman terms were addressed with that. I also sat down a lot of times. I remember when I developed behavior goals with students, I let them help me create this Google form. They had, I always added a couple of goals that possibly they wanted to monitor, and depending on your students' ability, they have the ability to monitor their progress as well, and that gives them the autonomy to make sure that they are seeing and a progress with their behavior. So this helped out tremendously. But what made this really special was I'm going to jump back over to this. What made this really special was the ability to put this into an automated system so that I didn't have to share this with the other teachers. And I've actually been able to be at JCPS. I have been able to collaborate with several different schools and see how they do it, which opened my eyes, which is that power of sharing. But I originally did this through Microsoft Office, and I know a lot of us are actually in a Microsoft Office instead of Google, but you can use, of course, Google Calendar, or you can use the Microsoft Calendar. And what I did was I went ahead and added I added that link that went from the Google form to, when you click share, after I completed my Google form, I shared that Google form and made an event within the calendar. So let's just go ahead and we're going to do Google Calendar real quick. And then create an event. So test. And I just created the event based upon when the student had the teacher. So if the student was in specials only on Mondays with the music teacher, I made sure that that music teacher got this reminder only on Mondays. And that way it wasn't a blanket email out to everybody so that they didn't forget. One thing I want to make sure also is inside your Google form, you're going to want to make sure that you ask who the teacher is so that you are able, as a special ed teacher, to see who's not filling out your behavior data. And if they need possible technology help or access to it in a little bit of a different way that will help them, as well as, and I know it doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes we have teachers that just don't fill out behavior forms. And that's important to grab that behavior data as well from them because their observations count as well. So when you go into Google Calendar, you just create an event and you can specify what time it is. And if you go into more options, you're able to add notifications. And I'm going to make sure I grab that link from the Google form here. And I have examples of all these in our presentation that we shared. And if I want to add a notification right here, I'm going to add an email, possibly 10 minutes before. And in that description, I can put, please fill out Elaine's behavior form. And there's some more magic I'm going to show you here in just a minute. And then after sending that out, then they will actually get a reminder. And you can also send out, if you're on Microsoft, their calendar reminder will pop up in the lower right corner of there. And often it pops up on their phone as well. Now, a key to this is to make sure that you delete if you do repeating, because we want to repeat this on most days of the week, because we have those for school days, that you also make sure that it ends after school is out as well as on holidays, because those teachers will not necessarily appreciate if you send them those. But that really, it multiplied the ability for my behavior plans to be filled out on a regular basis. It eliminated the clipboards and the public announcement that my student had a behavior plan, as well as their parents. And here's one of the magic things that I found was their parents were able to see how they were doing per day. So after you get some responses, there are charts down here that you can get. And once you open up a chart, I'm going to put, let's go back into here. Let me make sure I've got that here. Once you go in and see the chart, you can publish that chart. Then if you go into Bitly, here, and you create that chart and then you publish it and you grab that link, you can put it in a Bitly and then you can see, let's look at this one. This one's got a bunch of clicks. You can see analytics as far as when that parent clicks on that chart. And so then I was able to sit in an ARC and say, and have actually what I call covering your tail, data that the parent is viewing that information for the behavior chart and able to reinforce it. Because that was one of the most difficult things for me, was being able to see if the parents were communicating. And I also, by doing this, we eliminated the fact that I was chasing down the bus and fighting with the copier at the end of the day. So that was a huge benefit as well. A little bit of an added extra thing for you is that if you ever had had to sit down and share the IEPs with all of the general education teachers, a lot of them just looked at it and they were saying, I mean, it's almost foreign language to them at times. They look at it and they're just like, oh my goodness, just tell me what I need. So, and when I was previously with McCracken County, we created these things called IEPs at a glance. And those IEPs at a glance were Google Forms. And I filled out, created a Google form and filled it out for each student so that they knew who the case manager was, who the student was, and who and what their goals were. And if you've never used Autocrat, there are tons and tons, and I can even go ahead and link these in at a later time. There are tons of tutorials, especially on Kentucky Go Digital, for you to utilize Autocrat. And instead of me having to make a document, I was able to run through and here's our IEPs at a glance. Make a copy of that, and that's all automated for you guys. But I was able to then automate through Autocrat so that these teachers all got a copy of that IEP at a glance, and they were able to keep that rather than just the looking at the IEP. Of course, most of them have access to the IEPs in Infinite Campus, but this helped them be able to see what the goals were and what accommodations were quickly, and not have to go through the special ed IEP document that can be quite contrary. So this was just a little trick that I wanted to make sure that I shared as well. Another thing that I did as a collaborative teacher was I created a Google form that helped me memorize or helped me document and remember what accommodations the students were. Often I saw and serviced students that were not on my caseload. And so by creating a Google form for those pieces of the day that I saw different students, I was able to document if I gave student one paraphrasing or prompting and cueing, as well as use of technology and all the other accommodations that they required. And it allowed me to see what the student was actually needing depending on their IEP accommodations given. I saw yesterday I got to meet with the Phoenix's principal here in JCPS, and he opened my eyes to a whole nother way of using a Google form. He shared with me the use of that to track the actual time that was given for each student. And I thought, well, I need to add that in here as well. So being able to see the time that students were given and making sure that that is met is an awesome thing. And I want to make sure that we dive deeper into that later on, but I'm going to add that to this as well, hopefully. So on this last slide, there were some things that I know I flew through, but bit.ly.com is a huge help for me. It allows me to track the clicks that I get, as well as making things memorable for people to go to. And here is a video for you if you need help with that. And then, as I said earlier, I was able to share those published charts for the students' behavior plans with the parents, and I found it was easier for me to make a shortcut on their phone right there in the ARC. And so if you are interested in doing that, here are two little videos for you on how to do that on an iPhone and an Android phone, which are very simple, and it's really just like you would create a shortcut on your desktop. It's a shortcut on the home screen of your phone. So that helped tremendously as well. And then, so right here is a video on how to set up that Microsoft reminder in Calendar. And here's also that video that I referred to earlier as setting up Autocrat. And that takes you to the Kentucky Go Digital channel. I'm going to go ahead and take a moment, if you do not care, to take you to the channel, Kentucky Go Digital. If you have not, if you will just jump in there sometime today and make sure that you become familiar with this channel, because it is a huge resource for a lot of people. We have, as I said too, there's Autocrat on here, living calendars, and go ahead and hit that subscribe. And the reason why is because when you go to YouTube, it will automatically show on your home screen of YouTube what the latest show is, and we want to make sure that you get that as well, and you can stay in the know as well. So I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to go in and check out, let me not make you guys have a headache. I'm going to check out some of these things, these chats. We've got Vicki Baker. Yay, Vicki. So she says, you never knew you could see the charts from from this, those you're loving it. So yes, you can see the charts from the Google form, and I'm sorry I didn't share that with you, but because I was using one that was just created just now, but you can publish those as well. So you can share that link then through Bitly with the parents, and you can check. IEP at a glance, Patty, you are so welcome. Yes, and using Autocrat, pairing that with that helped me. You can also add something and then email it automatically to all those teachers as well. And then that way you're not having to, working at McCracken County High School, it was a huge school, and I could not tell you how many steps I got from going from one place to the next. And then also, not to mention, if you are a special ed teacher that is straddling different schools too. So, and also people, I guess, other services such as OT and PT could use that too. That would be really awesome. So awesome, Mary Todd. I'm so glad that you appreciate these resources, because that was my goal. So, all right. Well, I'm a few minutes early, and so we can take a decaffeinated break is one of my, if we want, or I'm going to go ahead and let Jenny go ahead if she wants to start. But we also have here in a little bit, we have Dr. Laura Clarke, who's going to be joining us and do her presentation. Jenny, I don't want to put you on the spot. I know I'm 13 minutes early, but I guess I kind of flew through some things. So,
no, I'm happy to start presenting if everybody's good to go. So thank you so much, Elaine. I learned so much from your presentation, and I can't wait to put those tricks into practice in my own classroom. All right, so I am going to start by pulling up my presentation. And I'm a newbie here, so thanks so much for being patient with me. Okay. Heidi, am I good?
You should be good. I think
good.
everybody should probably be able to see your screen.
Okay, hopefully everybody can see my my screen. So I just wanted to start by giving you guys a little bit of background information. I just returned to the classroom after a bit of a break, and one of the things that I was most nervous about was using technology with my students. I'm in an absolutely fantastic district with one-to-one technology, and I was just a little afraid I wasn't able to incorporate technology like my students deserved. So I kind of made a promise to myself. I said, hey, if I'm expecting my students to have a growth mindset, then I also need to have a growth mindset as well. So we have a fantastic technology coordinator, Heidi Neltner, in our district. And she and I would meet monthly, and I would say, okay, Heidi, give me something that I can apply and use and become fluent with over the month, and then check back in with me. And that was for accountability. So I'm going to just give you a potpourri of little pieces of technology that I used in my classroom, and I'm going to start super basic. I teach an elementary school classroom, so some are going to be more juvenile than if you're in a middle school and high school, but there's some things hopefully that you can take away for everyone. So the first thing that I started with was utilizing my iPhone, my iPad. Our elementary kiddos have iPads, and so a lot of my students had reading goals that required me to get a word per minute score. And initially I was just doing my reading running records, and I found that sometimes students weren't performing on those assessments as well as I knew that they were able to. So I just really basic used the iPad video camera, and I had the students, I gave them a passage, I taught them how to time themselves for 1 minute, and I had them just record the reading passage for the 1 minute. And then later we would come back together and we would actually score that together because I really do believe in having students involved in the process of monitoring their own goals and objectives. And so we would listen to their recording, or we would play the video of their recording. And what we did find is that the students performed better when they had the opportunity to do their reading assessment privately than when they did it with me. Sometimes just nerves got in the way. So that was something that I put into place. The other thing that I incorporated was accessing Newsela. Heidi had told me I really had a hard time finding passages for my students that were age appropriate and at their Lexile level. So if you haven't had the opportunity to check out newsela.com, you can easily log on. It's free for teachers, and I can pull up the same reading passage, and I can differentiate it at different Lexile levels. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I do this. I'm just going to go to .newsela.com, and I'm just going to sign into my account. I'm going to sign in. And I absolutely love this, and my students love it because it really allows them to choose high interest text. So for example, today, if I just pulled up today's article talking about the waste in Malaysia, and here I have the option to choose the Lexile level. So this passage is available Lexile 570 up to Lexile of 1100. We have other passages that go down to a Lexile of 320. And I can pull it up. It adjusts the Lexile levels. And then the students also have the opportunity to take comprehension questions as well. And then for those of you with ELL learners, there's also the Spanish option for students to access it. I love it because you can choose a variety of topics. My students were really interested in STEM, really interested in science, and my younger students really interested in animals, so I can choose text that was high interest for them, but that was at their Lexile level. So I really enjoyed that one. If you haven't checked that out, it's a great way for you to differentiate your reading passages. Okay. All right. The next thing that I use with my students, as I said earlier, a lot of my students have reading fluency goals, and I'm really trying to move away from popcorn reading, but we do a lot of repeated readings to increase their fluency, and I was trying to think of a way that we can make those repeated readings more engaging for students. So I started with emojis. I just printed out the basic emojis that our students have, and we would have passages that they would have to read, and they would choose an emoji. So if they chose the angry emoji, they would have to read that passage using an angry voice. So it's also teaching inflection, emotion, and it was a way for me to also weave in mindfulness and weave in some of that social emotional learning, because we did talk about, oh my goodness, you chose the angry emotion. What's your body doing? I saw that you were clenching your fists and that you got this really short, loud voice. So we did talk about some of the emotions that came along with the emojis. So initially I just pulled up I had the little emojis on just laminated cards, but then eventually I transitioned to the students could choose their emoji, and when they were reading a passage, we would have to guess which emotion or which emoji they were using as they read the passage. So just a fun way to just work on reading fluency without, the boring popcorn reading. Okay, so hopefully this works. ChatterPix is another app that I use with my students, so hopefully you guys can hear my video. Hey, any Hilltoppers in the house out there? I love ChatterPix. It's a great way to mix things up. You can have the students take a picture or upload their favorite picture, and you can have the students read their sight words. You can have the students read a passage, read ladder text, but just a fun way to kind of mix up some ordinary tasks. Mm-hmm. Okay, so ChatterPix, again, I work with elementary students, and again, it's getting back to that reading fluency. So I would have the students choose their favorite, here's the Hilltopper, I guess a favorite mascot from a college, and I would say, okay, I'm gonna have your mascot read your sight words, see how many sight words you can read accurately in 30 seconds. And then we would display the videos that they took using ChatterPix, and then we could say, oh my goodness, look, Top's got 20 sight words correctly in the 30 seconds, great job. So it was me assessing sight words. It was them doing it in a way that was fun for them. But also when we were checking their data, it wasn't like, oh, Ellie, you got 10 sight words. It was, oh, hey, Topper, you got 20 sight words, or you got 10 sight words. So it was mascots competing against mascots. So it took some of that personal emotion out of it as well, because I know sometimes students can get embarrassed, even though we build a culture of inclusion and acceptance. Sometimes students can get embarrassed about their scores, and this way it's the mascot score and not necessarily their score. Okay, let's see if my next slide's not progressing. Hold on just a second. Let me try to escape out of here. Okay, we'll just go this way. All right, so again,
Everybody is just chattering on the chat about that. Is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we did hear it. I just wanted you to know that too.
oh, I'm so glad. Thank you. All right, so the next thing, and again, a lot of these things are super basic because that's just where I was. I was at a point initially coming in that I wasn't feeling really confident with my technology skills. I'm sure everybody on here is at different levels, but for me, this is where I needed to start. The next thing that I used is like, hey, I'm a super pro at using the camera on my phone and my iPad, and I really wanted my students to work on finding evidence in the text and citing where they found the answer. So my students had reading comprehension goals, and even with my reading fluency goals. And as I said earlier, I was really trying to move away from the popcorn reading. So what we would do is I would pose a question, and we would just use the very basic camera option, and I would have my students, okay, I want you to go ahead and find where in the text you found that answer. So I would pose a comprehension question. My kiddos love the Puppy Pals books, and I didn't want to run photocopies of the chapter. I wanted them to be able to practice marking up the text, and this is a way that they could do it electronically. So, for example, if I had a question, how do you know that Charles would be a responsible pet owner? And I would always say to my students, hey, how do you know that? Is that your opinion, or did the text give us clues? So I would have the students snap a picture of where in the text they found that answer, and then we just click on those 3 dots on the screen, which gives us some of those editing options. And then the students can use the tools to highlight their text, and then they can insert a caption that answers the question that I had asked. So they said, Charles keeps Goldie safe by watching what he eats. And so that was their evidence from the text of how the character is a responsible pet owner. And so I really try to incorporate this more. There's so many ways that you can vary this, but it does help encourage the students to use textual evidence when they're answering questions. Okay, so I'm going to move on. So, as the year went on, I did increase in, apps that required me to challenge myself a little more. And so I used Flipgrid a lot, which is fantastic. I'm just going to show you super easy. I'm just going to go to flipgrid.com. It's free. And so I created an account, and my students created an account. And what I would do is I would use this with my students to, again, answer comprehension questions. So you log in, you're going to create a class, and I actually have separate classes for each group of students that I see. So I can just keep my data separate, and so that it's easier. So here's an example of how you could use this. So we were reading the Puppy Place books, chapter 4, and they had a minute and 30 seconds to record a passage of, do you think Charles would be a responsible pet owner? Why do you think so? And use examples from the text to support your position. So just using the example that I did earlier, we're wanting our students to, instead of giving me a written response, they're going to record basically a summary. So here's an example just for confidentiality. I didn't include actual samples of my students, but I always use my own personal children as my test subjects. And I say, hey, can you try technology for mommy? So when I get to school, I don't totally embarrass myself. So hopefully this will work. I asked my daughter to say why her mom is awesome.
My mom is awesome because she lets me invite friends over, and she lets me eat candy, and she doesn't make me do that many chores, but when she does, we have a little chore chart and she pays me for them. My mom is always so nice, and I love her. This is why my mom is the best mom ever. Lastly, she is a good mom because she let us get a puppy named Poppins. Hello, Poppins. That's my puppy. Follow him at Poppins the Doodle on Instagram. My mom is awesome
Okay.
because she lets me invite
Turn it off.
friends
We don't want to hear
over.
that again.
And
Okay. So in this example, of course, I just had my daughter just share, why I'm a super awesome mom. But then what I love about this is I can go back in and I can give her feedback. So I recorded feedback for her based upon what she shared. So, and I give specific feedback. I like have you thought about, I wonder if. So when I'm using this in the classroom with my students, I'll give them an open-ended question or a comprehension question. They'll have to record their answer, and then I give them feedback based upon what they provided in their video. So it's a great way for me to give, it's a great formative assessment tool, and it's a great way for me to give that immediate feedback and just in a fun, personalized manner. The way we use this a lot initially is the students would read a Newsella passage, and I would have them summarize what they thought the main idea of the passage was. And so we would all independently read the same passage. They would go to separate corners of the room. They would record their summary, and then we'd watch them all together, and we would kind of calibrate and see, did we identify the same main idea? If so, great. If not, why not? And so it was just a really fun way just to, get students thinking and talking about different features of text. Okay. All right. So I think I might have ended a little early as well, but I was super nervous. But you guys are absolutely an awesome audience, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you guys have any questions.
I am looking at the live YouTube chat, and we have, let's see if I have any questions. There are a lot of positive comments. We've got Mary Todd. She says she goes to Newsella for gen ed teachers too, to differentiate for them as well, because we know a lot of times students do need special assistance, even though they're not necessarily in special ed. So absolutely, we agree with that. I do, at least. I want to speak only for myself. Emoji reading is a great idea. I'm going to use this, as Vicky Baker. So she loves it. Jenny, you've done awesome. You've done awesome. So we've got Christina Benjamin, had not heard of Chatterpix before either. So that's great. So yes, and I think I hadn't thought about pairing that with fluency. And so that definitely is a strong thing, because then they're building their confidence too. So, and how adorable is your daughter? She's so we do have a question. Vanessa Mormon says, do your students use their phone or a Chromebook to record? Our school currently does not allow the Chromebook access to camera or YouTube. So do we have any ideas to assist with that?
Our students have one-to-one technology, so they do use their iPads. But if they forget their iPad, I do have a class iPad that they have access to, or I do have my phone that they can just record on using my phone. I'm not really super comfortable with that option, but it is, something that we have available for our students. So
I wonder if you can also record and then upload later, if there's a possibility way. So maybe try that. Try that for us, Vanessa, and then get back to us on that hashtag. And speaking of that hashtag, just make sure that you are tweeting out for us using that hashtag KYGoDigital, so that whatever you learn, we can force multiply with the power of Twitter as well. So we have another presentation that is going to start here in a little bit. So don't go away if you need to take a break and you of it all, and so all is good. So I've got the chat for you. If there are any questions, I'll help with that. And Jenny and Dusty, since you're still with us, if there are other questions for us out there in on Twitter, go ahead. If you have questions for either of our other presenters or myself, go ahead and put that down on that chat as well. But Laura, if you are ready and need any assistance, let me know. I'm right here. And then without further ado, I will let you go ahead.
Perfect. Oh, just remind me how to share my screen with you all.
Okay.
Yeah, remind me how to share my screen.
Oh, that's okay. To the left-hand top corner, there's a green arrow.
Gotcha.
Yep, and you'll push that, and then another window will pop up. Perfect. And now we see whatever you see on your computer.
Awesome. Wonderful. Okay. And if I use present mode, it won't mess anybody up?
Nope. You are good. It looks great.
Excellent. Do you want to give me like a 10-minute warning when you need me to wrap up? And I will roll until then.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
All
Thank
right.
you, Dr. Clarke.
Thank you. Well, I am so excited to be sharing with you some ideas we can use for progress monitoring. There is a bit.ly link down in the corner you should be able to use to get to the slide deck if you would like to copy that. And if there are any challenges with that, just let us know, and then I can work on that link and include it in the master system when we're done. So a few reminders for those of us in Kentucky. All of our work when we're looking at progress monitoring is based on KDE's IEP guidance document. Our most recent one is the 2018 version. I've got the cover up here, and you'll notice at the bottom of this chart, that pink ongoing progress monitoring, which is a really good visual reminder that we're always focused on that progress monitoring data, and it should inform every decision that we make throughout the IEP process. So everything from present levels all the way down when we're making determinations about least restrictive environment and extended school year services, all of those decisions have to be based in and decided upon by our data. We're looking at both the progress monitoring data specific to the IEP and keeping in mind that it has to be in compliance with whatever we've said in that IEP goal. So if our goal says we're going to collect 2 different sets of data every week, then we have to have those 2 sets of data every week. And we also want to do what's called kind of best practice of triangulating the data. So as we're coming upon our annual review cycle or getting ready to have a meeting, it's a really good practice to go ahead and have more than just one set of data to make sure that the data you've collected through progress monitoring kind of matches what we're seeing across the board, across the student's academic day. So looking at more than one set of data. So we're going to start in Google Sheets, which is an excellent tool that we can use across the state of Kentucky. A lot of us are using Google Classroom, so this is a great natural extension. And I've got a goal here that a student has, Sarah. So given a 5th grade reading passage, Sarah will read 100 words per minute in 3 out of 5 opportunities. And this will be measured weekly. And the method of measurement we chose is a curriculum-based measurement. Just a quick reminder for folks, remember that if you are going to use this as your goal and this is going to be the system you are going to use to progress monitor, you need to also have baseline data using that same system. So you'll want to set your system up prior to the development of the IEP because your baseline data you would want to collect in the same system. So if I'm looking at what to use, we really want to think about the form versus the function. We want to make sure that we're choosing a tool that is simple and easy to use. The other criteria in the guidance document talks about is data being easy to analyze. So there's all kinds of different choices. And within Google, I've got forms, I've got sheets. Those are both really great systems. I just want to think about when I'm making my decision, which one is going to be the easiest to use to collect the data and which is going to give me the easiest data to analyze. So for example, I love Class Dojo and I love to use it to collect behavior data, but it's not always easy to analyze because when I use Class Dojo, it just gives me a linear list. It doesn't really put it in a form like we can get out of Google Sheets where I could get a bar graph, a line graph. I have all different ways I can analyze the data. So if we're starting with Google Forms, which is an easy way to jump in, the first thing you're going to do when you're in your drive, if you kind of follow the arrows at number 1, clicking on the new, and then I usually start with a new folder and then set it up with that student's name, and I have all of my data sheets in one folder for that student. Some people say they do it by class, by reading goals, whatever makes sense to you, but I would go ahead and set up early on an organizational system. Then to get to Google Forms, you're going to click on the more down here and then go to Google Forms. Once you're in your Google form, you can name your Google form first, but if you name it here, it's going to automatically replicate that.
Laura, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second.
Yes, ma'am.
Technical difficulties.
Yes.
Can you unscreen share and then screen share again? For some reason, even though on my side it looks like you and I are screen sharing, it is not. So we may have to try that. So if you don't mind, I apologize.
No worries.
Noticed until someone called attention to it.
Absolutely. Let's hit this again and see if this works.
Jimmy on the bottom right, even though I am in the Hangout. Okay.
Okay, hang on. Let's see.
Hang with us, people. Let's see.
One more try. All righty. Share. All right. Are we now seeing Kentucky Go Digital? And
let's see.
are we in the slides yet? Yeah, if you want to check if it was working better when I'm just here, I don't have to go full screen if this was working better.
All right, so we're going to, I'm just checking because where I get to see it, it's on a lag. So.
Gotcha.
No slides yet. Okay. Well, let's see what I can do. It's so weird because it says we're live. Poor people. Poor people.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Would be
You're good.
Oh,
How about this?
Yeah.
Of course, and I know you were nervous, and I don't. Poor bless your heart. It's not you. It's the technology. So, I'm going to make a copy of yours, and we're going to see if I can share this screen, and then you and I can collaborate. So
that sounds great.
Try that. We are good at this. We can get this.
We
going.
can do this.
Right. So let me present, and then do your awesome slides. Do you remember what number you were on?
That looks good. Let's go there.
Okay, that is working. All right. So, all right. Is this good? Can you see what I'm doing?
I can.
I'm on number 10. Okay, everyone. So there we go. We are just going to go. And if you don't mind to just say next, and I will help you out. How's that?
That will be perfect. Absolutely.
Awesome.
All right. So the first thing you'll do is name your slides. And I usually name it with the student's name and then a brief summary of whatever the goal here. So for here, it's Sarah's word per minute reading goal. To add questions, I've got a yellow arrow pointing there to the plus. When you click on the plus block, excuse me, it's going to add questions. You've already got a spot that says untitled question for the very first question. Next. So to share what I've got, actually, let me go back. If you look at the title where it says Kentucky Go Digital Example, I've got a note there that just lets people know if I've got more than one person, more than just myself, maybe the instructional assistant I work with or the gen ed teacher is also going to collect some data. I've got directions there for how the data should be collected. And then if you look at the send button, when I click on that, if you want to go to the next slide, I think I screenshotted that part also. Mm-hmm. Yes. It gives you several different options. So you can either email directly to a partner teacher, or you can click on the link button, which is what I did, and copy that link. And then I use that several different ways. The first way is I usually create one master Google Doc, and I have all of the links for all of my students' goals there so that I can just quickly pop in and out of all the different forms that I have. And that to me is a little faster than going through my drive and opening a bunch of folders every time. I share the same information. If I've got multiple people helping collect data, then you can share that with multiple people that way. And next. To see the data that we're collecting, you would click on that first yellow arrow where it says responses. And if you want to go ahead and generate a Google Sheet, then you click on the little green box the arrow is pointing to, and that will create a parallel Google Sheet. The nice thing about that is that your data, as you continue to add to your Google form every week or however often you're collecting data, it will simultaneously update the Google Sheet. And you don't have to generate a new Google Sheet every time. Those two are married together and the information will always be the same. When I'm thinking about like why to choose Google Form over Google Sheet, I like this format in that I can send it to multiple people and everybody can put in data. So a lot of times for students with behaviors, if I'm looking at on-task behavior or in-seat behavior, and especially in secondary settings, student might have 5 or 6 teachers, I send them all the link in the end of every class. They can just put in, you know, that Josh was out of seat 5 times, rather than having everybody go into that master spreadsheet and add data. So to me, that the simplicity of that is super helpful. You could also kind of use this same kind of system as a parent communication tool. You know, if you wanted to know, for example, my son, we support his activity daily living, and we look a lot of times at did he eat well the night before, sleep well, and you know, what if he has any different continent needs that we're watching. So I could easily share a form back and forth between home and school where, you know, every day as a mom, I could go in, add my 3 answers and send it to the teacher, and they would have that information over time. So if I want to look at the responses within Google Forms, I can easily do that. And here I've got some sample data by looking at the summary data. If you are having different teachers fill that out, if you go back to that slide,
Sorry.
then the individual tab I could use to just see the data that, you know, people put in over time. So especially if I'm looking at 5 or 6 different things every time, I could look at each day's separate data or look at it this way. Perfect. Next. Thank you for navigating. So this is what it looked like in the sheet form that matches the one we're in. And here you'll see that we've got both the word per minute data and the errors. And that, again, is automatically generated and would continue populating. So the next day that I collected data, it would pop up. You'll notice that in my 2 questions, I only asked for words per minute and errors. I didn't ask for what the date, and that's because it's automatically time stamped. Now, if you were planning on inputting data at the end of the week for data that was collected over multiple days, then you would want to go ahead and add a date or a time as one of your questions. But if you're only collecting data once a week, then the timestamp would give you the date information and you wouldn't need that additional question. Next. So to me, the lovely thing about using Google Sheets is that criterion that KDE has that the data we collect be both easy to collect and easy to analyze. I can very quickly generate a chart within Google Sheets and choose. Typically when you choose a chart, at least in my setup, it automatically does a bar graph. And for data that I usually collect, I really want a line chart. But you'll see there under the chart editor where it says chart type, I just change it from bar graph to line chart. And this also automatically updates. So I can create that chart, you know, at the beginning of my data collection cycle. And by the end of the semester or the 6-week period, it will automatically update that as we go along. It allows you to change all of the headings and the any information that you want to update all within this format. And then I can copy this out to share with parents. Next. So if you want to go straight to using Google Sheets instead of Google Forms, that also is a super simple process. Next. Here I've got an example of a Google sheet that I could use for looking at math problem accuracy. You'll want to be really clear in your labeling. So here I was very specific that I'm looking at math problem accuracy of 2-digit by 2-digit addition. And then I've got the different dates that I've collected the data, and then the data itself that I could again use to create my chart. If you are looking over near the share button, which is on the far right, the big green button, and then you look at that row right below it, the little box with the bars in it is the chart creator button that's in Google Sheets. Next button, or next slide. Is there one after that? Whoops, back to. Oh, nope, sorry. So we've got those two. All right, so we've looked at this slide already. Yes, so the one after that, sorry. If you're kind of looking at a big grand sum up, which would be the slide after the easy peasy slide, Google Forms and Google Sheets are really useful if we're looking at academic data. So words per minute, problem solved correctly. Behavior data is super simple to chart using these forms too. And we can look at their time in seat, time to start work, whether they're following directions, if you completed a task. All of those are really easy. So the next thing I was going to do, and maybe we can chat about how we can problem solve this, I was going to actually create a form and a sheet from scratch and just kind of walk through those steps separately and show a few other tips with those. Should we try the screen sharing from this end again and see if we can make that work?
Absolutely, Laura, we can try that. Yes.
All righty.
Okay, so I'm going to stop screen sharing, everyone. And I'm going to go to the live. If you don't mind in the chat to let me know that it's working. There's a way to add. Okay, so we do have, I want to go ahead, Laura, while you're trying to do that, talk about the chat here. So we've got, Jessica, you're so welcome for us working through those. It's been interesting though. I think it's internet issues though, even though I'm hardwired. So to generate a trend line, Toby May says, for your data, do you copy and paste sheets from the form responses into a new sheet to make a graph with a trend line? So I can actually answer that if you want to, or Laura, if you want to. But I think my answer would be you can just generate that within the same responses spreadsheet if you want, or you can just make that chart an actual another tab that is down inside that same spreadsheet. I think, is that what they were asking? Am I understanding correct? Sheet to make a graph with a trend line. It's just a it's actually just a little oh, Tim Roberts says he figured it out, but it's just actually a setting on the chart. So am I correct, Laura?
Yes, I am though I'm
do it.
And also, so I'm double checking with Dusty because she can test that out while we're chatting to make sure that pops up. Correct.
Okay, Tim says there's a way to add a trend line. Someone discovered it towards the end of the year as they wanted it in the copy of the progress monitoring sheet as we have for the parent. I can try to figure it out again, Tim says. The trend line would be helpful. Yes, Rebecca, I agree. Am I correct that it was a requirement now in the new law that we had to have a trend line? Yeah.
Yes, and I have several examples. Hang on just a second. I've got several examples of progress monitoring sheets that different districts have created, and I will hyperlink those into the presentation so that everybody, if you want to make copies of those, you can. And some of those already have the trend line built in to that. But Dusty is doing a quick trial run of that. Yeah, you can definitely put in to those. I'm gonna try this again and let's see if the screen share. It says I am screen sharing, so let's see if
it does. Let me
it works for folks. But in these progress monitoring graph examples, These are all ones that were shared with us by districts, and everybody can put in data. So, but in these progress monitoring graph examples, these are all ones that were shared with us by districts. I think your sound is on, it's echoing through us. But in these progress monitoring graph examples.
Okay, so let's see, Laura.
Yes.
We cannot see your, I do not understand what's going on. But yes, let's see. Progress monitoring graph example. Let me grab that link. Can you share that link real quick with me, and then that way?
I can, absolutely.
Awesome.
Let me bit.ly this real quick. And I will put it in the presentation.
Okay. Sorry, friends. All right. So I'm going to go to Dr. Clarke's here presentation. After I'll make a copy after she does that. To remind you guys too to make a copy again because she's adding some goodies. So make sure that you make a copy after she adds those goodies because that will cut the tie. You won't get that because it's not a live document. Let me know when you're ready, Dr. Clarke. We don't want to make it too.
And you know what? I think to make that easier, while I put it in the chat box, and then that way people won't have to worry. You can add it to your phone. Would that be easier?
Awesome. Okay.
Right.
So she's going to put that in the chat box for us, and that way.
This is one of them right there. So like that, make sure you can see that. But we've got a few more slides we can go through because I think that might be easier than, since my screens aren't sharing well, that might be the easiest way to do that. Do you want to take control and we'll do I've got a few resources, share out with folks.
All right, so I've got Dr. Clarke's got this here.
All right, and then I just got that might not have the right sharing settings, so let me go in and revise that real quick. Yep, they were wrong. All right. Okay, I just did sharing settings, so if you want to try and refresh, for those of you that clicked on that link.
There you go. It is right there in your thing. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that because I'm going to share my screen as I'll be doing that, actually. There we go. Okay, so Dr. Clarke, you want to talk us through this a little bit, and then I will follow along.
Absolutely. Let's see. I see you in the cabinets, but no. Oh, probably because I'm still sharing. Let me change that.
There we go.
All right. Let's see. On the screen, I see you, not the of the sheet.
Because I'm not screen sharing again. So there we go, guys. Sorry, guys. All right. How's that?
There we go. Perfect. All right. So this probably looks familiar to a lot of you who have collected data over time. So this is just the traditional sheet that we've had in Excel forever, and some wise tech folks went ahead and updated into Google Sheets. So it has the same components that we've had in the past, where you've got the spot to put all the students' information, put in the annual goal, and if there are benchmarks that go along with that goal. The one thing I will say that we've talked through with different people, if your benchmarks are what we call stair-stepped, so meaning that you're looking at more words per minute over time, and you move up and down those benchmark lines, it will change the color that appears. So sometimes I've found that it made more sense, like if I'm just trying to increase words per minute, that I actually just kept that all on my benchmark one line so that it showed continued progression as opposed to a broken line, a new color and a new color. And where the new colors make sense is if my benchmarks are what we more call the fruit basket. So they're very different things. So maybe for my benchmark 1, I was looking at punctuation, and benchmark 2, I'm looking at spelling, and benchmark 3, I'm looking at complete sentences. And then it definitely makes sense, and I would want my graph to show 3 very distinct colors and sets of data. Does that make sense to everybody, big picture wise?
Let's see. I'm going to look at the chat.
It should work, and it should.
People headaches by going back and forth, back and forth. Let's see. We're going to go here. There it is.
And it should, that sheet should work just like your Excel file for those of you that use that in your districts, it should do the same thing.
Awesome. Awesome.
Elaine,
So
if you want to go back, oh, go ahead.
Oh, the last part. I can go back to something. Do you want?
There are a few more resources in the slides that I shared just when we're looking at overall, trying to set up what kind of progress monitoring system to look at. And when you're thinking about choices, I shared a few resources that we've discovered recently that were super helpful.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the slide and then reshare my screen real quick.
All right. And we'll just go to the slide that's right after the one that I shared about academic versus behavior data.
Okay. Sorry, guys. I know I'm probably giving you guys headaches going in and out, in and out. So there we go. Present to everyone. Here we are. Can you see it there, Dr. Clarke?
I can, yes.
Awesome. Here we go.
All right. So I think that we're at like slide 20. Yeah, 23.
Okay.
So if you haven't yet come across the website CI3T, I discovered this recently through the Council for Exceptional Children's Behavior Division. Their journal, Beyond Behavior, shared this resource across a series of articles. And CI3T, if you go to their professional learning tab and scroll down, they have a whole slew of evidence-based practices that you can choose among for supporting students. A lot of those are very specific behavior interventions. So for example, pre-correction and active supervision. In addition to a really short description of what that intervention strategy is, there's a video to accompany it. There are implementation checklists, recommended data forms. There is usually a video that shows the strategy in play, and then usually 5 or 6 other resources that you can use. And it breaks down just tons and tons and tons of strategies we use to support students with disabilities. There's also great information you can see there about FBAs and lots of information about the current research base to support students with disabilities, which is a requirement of both ESSA and IDEA. So if you haven't checked out the CI3T, the specific tab you want is that professional learning tab. And when you dig down into that, you'll see all of the different tools. The implementation checklists are super helpful. They also usually have a fidelity checklist. And like I said, there's sample data collection forms that you can use. And most of those are really easy to replicate in either forms or in sheets. The next resource, or next tab, kind of shows you what that looks like on slide 25, Elaine. Yeah, so there is pre-correction, and it again walks you through just some really specific information. It's super nice if you are wanting to use a strategy for a student, and especially at the secondary level, where you need to train a lot of general education teachers on how to implement that strategy, or instructional assistants, or just need a refresher for yourself in what the current practice is. It gives you all the resources you would need to do that. So super helpful resources. Definitely good to double check the strategies you're currently using, because this website has the most recent literature and research behind those strategies. On slide 26, this is an example of what that implementation checklist looks like. And it was super well done, in that it's really easy just to walk through. Do I know a definition for the behavior? Did I try this? Did I try this? Did I try that? So I recommended a lot of these going into an IEP meeting, even just to help everybody at the table understand and talk through, is this really the best strategy for the behavior that we're seeing with a student in the classroom? On slide 27, for those of us that used IRIS modules when we were in our undergraduate and graduate programs, IRIS just underwent a huge overhaul, revamp, where they've added a lot of new resources and modules. So if you are looking for specific strategies and ideas, and this is a great place to go, they also have lots of information about progress monitoring and data collection. So those are a good resource if you want to do a deeper dive into what kind of tools could I use. Slide 28. If you go to the IRIS resource locator and look for progress monitoring. There are lots of great resources. Their behavior resources, you can see there's more than 100 there. Really fantastic information. Some of it is really parent friendly. Others of it are a little bit more complex, but again, a good place to go if you're looking for what system might be useful. And then slide 29 just has my contact information. If you run into specific questions and you would like some more information, please don't hesitate to reach out. I am happy to help. Elaine, I'm trying to think through a good way to model, and maybe we just leave that step off. So I was planning to actually build a Google form and a Google sheet from scratch, but I'm not sure how to slide share that the best way. You're muted.
Thank you. I can assist if need be, but let's let our viewers go ahead and tell us if they need that. You know, we have 18 people watching us and with us right now, so we can actually ask them if they need that, or we can answer maybe possibly some other questions that they had for us overall. So I'm going to go ahead and post that to everyone. Is it beneficial for us to walk you through that, creating a Google form and looking at the data? Because we could all just share that link and then we could all fill out to get some data quite quickly if we want. I like that idea. And you never know the ability level of your audience unless you ask them prior. But
Absolutely.
So we can definitely sometimes.
And while people are responding, I will say one of my favorite things about Google Sheets, like Class Dojo, one of the things I loved about Class Dojo is I get that parent link and I can share that so parents get that live update. But Google Sheets has that same ability because I can share in two different ways. So I can share with all of my other teachers or people that are collecting data an edit possibility. So they can edit the slides, but then with parents, I just share, and sometimes my principal, he just wanted to be able to see the data, right? He didn't want to change it. The director of special ed wanted to see the data, but not be able to change it. So then you can share with them just that share or view mode, and everybody gets to see the data so that I'm not having to send something home, a copy home every day. Everybody has access live and in the moment. And I just think that's a beautiful way to use the share features within that. And Dusty, thank you for being Johnny on the spot, found several excellent resources about finding the trend line. So I will add that to my slides. And if people want to check that a little bit later on today, and like you said, recopy the original slides, it'll have that extra information.
Awesome. Well,
Dusty, do you want to post the video? Dusty found a quick 30-second model on how to add the trend line.
Perfect. Yay. Thank you. So I have polled the audience, and most of them said they're good with both, but they appreciated everything that you shared. And so I've asked them if they had any questions for the presenters. And if not, that does conclude this track. But I wanted to make sure everybody felt comfortable with knowing that we do have a short lunch break after this short answers or question and answer piece of this. And so I hope everybody has enjoyed this session. I know I learned some things, even from our audience. I learned some things. So you can always go back to, and these will all be archived on the kygoddigital.com for your view later if you want to, because that is the power of pause, and it's extremely beneficial. I always joke and say when I needed to start my generator in the middle of the winter, I went to YouTube and I paused it and I rewound it and I paused it and watched it and all that stuff. So this too, just like PD, we can go back and forth, and that is a huge paradigm shift in PD. So
Elaine, while we're all here together, if everyone wouldn't mind giving us some feedback, because I know this is a new strand for Kentucky Go Digital, and definitely something that we're interested in growing for special education teachers and gen ed teachers who support kids with disabilities. So if people have feedback on what topics they think would be really relevant, we definitely would want to know that so that we can kind of continue to evolve our Kentucky Go Digital resources to support teachers as they work with kids with disabilities in their classrooms.
I love that. And I'll watch that. I'll watch the chat. And meanwhile, while we are here, I want to make sure that everybody understands that your PD certificate is going to be auto-generated for you at the end of the day, and the hours is actually going to be, I know Caitlin sent this out earlier, it's going to be blank because some of us are not going to be able to attend the entire day, so that is on the honor system. It does have ELA credit if you are needing that as well. But and the feedback is very beneficial. And actually, Laura, if you're interested in that as well, later on within that process of getting their PD credit, they are going to get some questions that will allow them to give us feedback as well. So that will help us. So
Perfect.
Yes.
That'll be awesome.
So Dusty and Jenny, if you guys have anything else to add, I don't want to cut you off. I want to give you absolutely a turn. Thank you for your brilliant minds, ladies. We definitely, this is a team sport, and I think with the power of Twitter, the power of YouTube, and this PLN, Kentucky Go Digital, is huge. And I wish I had it earlier in my career, but so thankful that I've got it now, because I can shoot an email out on Twitter or a question out on Twitter and get it answered by a lot of brilliant people out there that have experience. And so it's amazing that Professional Learning Network is huge. But so for our viewers, make sure that you go and take a short lunch break and then come back. I believe our keynote is going to start again. Our afternoon keynote is at 12:30. And after that, then we have our breakout sessions for Sharing Create. So there's lots of good stuff there as well. So we've got Toby May in here, and Patty Lynn says, thank you. Great job, ladies. Lots of great information, and they're excited to start the next school year with some of this stuff. So, all right. So I think I've given all my reminders. Make sure you also tweet out with that hashtag some of the things that you learned so that we can multiply that as well. So, all right. Well, to further then, everybody have a great day, and see you later.
Thanks,
Thank you. Thanks.
12:30 for the keynote at kygodigital.com. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.